All right, here we go, everyone. Another awesome episode of the All Around Adventure podcast, and I'm excited to be talking with Chelsea Burnett today, who is part of Texas Storm Chasers. Chelsea, thanks so much for taking time for joining me, and welcome to the All Around Adventure podcast.
Thank you. I'm stoked to be here.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this conversation. This is definitely going to be a very unique discussion for me because I have yet to welcome a storm chaser on the All Around Adventure podcast. So this is a bit of a milestone episode. And I have to admit something to you, though, is that I haven't actually thought about doing storm chasing as a topic on the podcast before, but I think it fits the profile pretty well with what I'm trying to do here. So I've been looking forward to this.
I completely agree. And the podcasts I've been on in the past, they've all said the same thing. We'll get more into it during our conversation, but people just don't see storm chasers as people. It's really weird. So yeah, we'll talk more about that.
Right. Well, I'm sure many have probably said to you that you're probably a special breed to actually want to go out and chase storms.
That's exactly right. That's a common line. Oh, yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to go back to the beginning a little bit. That's how I like to start off with all my guests, because every great story has a beginning, of course. So just take us back a little bit here. This fascination with storms that you have, where did this come from? What kind of started this for you?
That is a question I get frequently whenever I tell people that I storm chase. I grew up in Oklahoma, so that's kind of a given. We're right in the heart of Tornado Alley.
Right.
I grew up with thunderstorms. My grandma, my dad, my mom, they have stories of me. Oh, Chelsea used to wake up at night and watch out the window. I'd have to come and tell you to go to bed. Or, I was a toddler. I would just watch him out the door, not be scared. So at that point, the family started tuning in like, there might be something here. But my earliest recollection was sixth grade earth sciences class with Miss Shivers. I still remember her name. We covered the chapter on weather. And that is when the light bulb clicked on for me, like, holy cow, this topic is actually really awesome. So that following year was the May 3rd, 1999 tornado outbreak in Oklahoma. So that was like the first real raw experience. I was not in the middle of any of those tornadoes, but they were close enough that my family and I had to bounce around from shelter to shelter all night because there was just one storm after another. So, homes in the Southern Plains don't have basements for the most part. So we actually had to hop around from the fire station, to our grandparents' house who had a cubby under the stairs. So growing up, storms were just, a part of my life. And, then Twister came out and, it was just over from there. So plan A, I had one plan, and that was to grow up and be a storm chaser. Throughout middle school and high school, family would say, or friends would say, adults in my life would say, you make a great TV meteorologist. No, I don't want to be at a desk while it's happening. I want to be out in it. So, grew up, had the plan to storm chase, for my whole life, and went to OU because that is like the Mecca. That is like the heart of storm chasers is Norman, Oklahoma. And of course, the University of Oklahoma is there. Well, I get through my first couple of semesters and completely bomb the program. The math is ridiculous. The math is some of the worst math I've ever dealt with. So I tuck my tail between my legs. I drop out of the program. Family started getting kind of concerned, like, wow, Chelsea, what are you going to do? I didn't have a plan B. So I moved to Texas, and that's kind of when I got to, get my feet back on the ground, get myself reestablished. Life took a turn. I completed college down here in a completely different field than intended to. I, just got in business. Then that's when I met David Reimer, who's the owner of Texas Storm Chasers, in 2010. And that just kind of rekindled everything for me. So yeah, here we are.
Yes. It's funny how you mentioned the film Twister. I was born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s. And of course, Twister was, a big film that had come out. And I think it sparked a lot of people's like fascination, or at the very least, their curiosity about, storms and tornadoes and everything. So, all right. But like, what are some of like your early memories of like storm chasing? When actually does that sort of kind of fall in like the timeline of your life where you actually kind of went out there and started doing it? And was it like just, maybe just something that you just did like for fun? Did you start doing it professionally right away? Fill us into the details. I'm not sure how all that works.
No, that's perfect. That actually segues from when I met David. So I met him in 2010 at a weather conference locally here. And in 2011, he invited me out for my very first storm chase. So April, I can't remember the date, I should, but April 2011 was my very first storm chase. I actually have a picture of me under my first wall cloud. Very monumental for me. So it just took the nudge of people just asking me. There was no way I was going to try to get out there and do it on my own. So it took other people inviting me and giving me that confidence, to build up to where I am now. But 2011 was when I first started storm chasing. That same year, though, got married. I was still in college. I had a corporate cubicle job. So after 2011, storm chasing took a hard back seat for a long time. My son was born in 2013. 1 month after he was born, I have family texting me pictures of tornadoes near my hometown of Shawnee, Oklahoma. My mom, my stepsisters, they were all doing the storm chasing for me. How does that make a new mom feel, when she's sleep deprived and she can't get out there and storm chase and her own family is getting to do it. So, I allowed life to kind of take over. I eventually finished college in 2014, thankfully. And then 2015 rolled around. I actually saw my first tornado then, and it was a very unconventional tornado. It was at night. It was the day after Christmas, and it was here in Dallas. So it wasn't that big tornado that went through Rowlett and Garland. It was the one that formed before near I-35 near Red Oak. It was a nighttime tornado. I can only see it from the flashes of lightning and the power flashes it was creating. And I was standing under an awning at a gas station just watching this thing, just slowly move in between the lightning flashes. So that's how that snowball, really started to gain speed and grow. And so after I saw my first tornado, I've seen 26 more since then, mostly with the help of my storm chasing partner and spouse, who is Adam Lucia with Illinois Storm Chasers. So he's the big reason why I've seen many of the storms that I have. So not to get too far ahead into the conversation, it's just easy to just roll with it. But when it comes to the birth of my storm chasing, it came about in a very unconventional way, but I'm so happy that it happened the way it did. So.
All right, right on. So going out there and chasing the storms. And again, you're going to have to excuse my ignorance here because I haven't looked into this too much before getting on here. I figured I would just learn from you in the conversation itself. But what are some of the objectives of actually going out and chasing storms besides, of course, kind of the thrill, the excitement, the rush, and all that good stuff? But I mean, is there like stuff you're documenting, or like what are you trying to I guess collect data on, if I may, when you're out there?
That's a good question, because there is this general consensus of just who storm chasers are and what they do. From the people I've talked to, the general public thinks that storm chasers are just these wild, crazy, look at me yahoos, who just want to get their 15 minutes of fame out on the local news, which I would probably say 25 to 50% of storm chasers, that's all they want to do is just that. So they're not wrong, but not every storm chaser is that way. So some goals might be to get your 15 minutes of fame, to be able to have something to brag about at the end of the day. Then you dive more into storm spotting. It's a little bit different than storm chasing. Storm spotting is just something that locals will do when storms come into their area. They'll spot them. They'll help the National Weather Service out that way, because the National Weather Service is the entity that puts out those tornado watches and warnings that we hear about every year. So those entities can't do their job without storm chasers. We are their eyes on the ground, their boots on the ground. They can only look at a radar in their office and say, well, that looks like a hook echo. That looks like a debris ball signature on radar. We don't know because we're not out there. So they rely on us as storm chasers to make reports on an app on our phone in real time and be able to confirm and to be able to push those warnings out that much quicker, because we're there, we're on scene. So I would say the majority of storm chasers, that's what they contribute to society, besides just getting out there for fun. And then you take it up another level and you have actual research that happens. The University of Oklahoma, Texas Tech, many other schools, universities, federal programs out there. There's grant money out there for people to get out and to actually research tornadoes. So I would say that's like a 1, 2, 3 tier for storm chasers, if you will.
Gotcha. Okay. I kind of noticed a little bit of a correlation between what you do and what I do. I didn't mention this when you and I were connecting, but I'm an archaeologist by day. And now we do a lot of research on archaeological sites that we want to go to. We got satellite imagery and things like that. But then we also have to do ground truthing, meaning we actually go to the site on the ground and see it for ourselves. So I imagine when it comes to chasing storms and tracking storms, yes, you have those people in a command center somewhere looking at all these radar images, but then you are actually the one that's ground truthing in this case and seeing these storms on the ground in and of itself. So like while you're out there, let's see, what was I? Where was I? I was going something. I was going someplace with that an analogy there. So you were mentioning about watches and warnings. What exactly is the difference? I feel like I have an idea what the difference is, but I'll actually let you tell it for itself, because maybe I might miss something.
No, so, absolutely. Yeah. I talk about this all the time in my presentations. So for kids, to help them understand what the difference between a tornado watch and a tornado warning is, I say take a pile of Legos, because let's be honest, every kid has some sort of Lego set. I'm like, that pile of Legos, that's nothing yet, right? It's just a pile of Legos. It's not built yet. There's not a Lego person figurine thing. That's what a tornado watch is. The ingredients are there in the atmosphere, but there's no thunderstorm yet that's producing a tornado. A tornado warning is that Lego man. It's built. You built it. It's ready to be played with. The tornado warning is the storm has formed. The ingredients have come together. The storm is here. It's about to produce a tornado, or it already has. So for adults, it's like baking a cake. You have all the ingredients out on the table, your eggs, your flour, your seasonings, whatever, but there's no cake because you haven't put it in the oven. So tornado watch is your ingredients for a cake. Tornado warning is the cake baked, it's done, it's ready to be served. Tornado warning, the ingredients have come together, the storms are here, things are about to happen.
Gotcha. So. No, that works out perfectly. So I especially like the Lego analogy on that one too.
Works for kids. Oh yeah. I have an 8-year-old son, so that's where I got it from.
All right. Awesome. Well, I wanted to ask you about like the classification of like different tornadoes that you might find out there. Because of course, going back to like the film Twister, they had all these numbers, proceeding with the letter F, right? Like F1 all the way up to F5, or as they called in the movie, the finger of God was, the F5. So is that actually like how tornadoes are classified in that way? Or is that something else entirely? I'm sure there's might be some differences between a work of fiction and how it actually is.
Sure. The one biggest difference is tornadoes aren't classified before they formed. Throughout the whole movie, it's, the NSSL's predicting an F5. No, that you don't know it's an F5 till after, the damage has been done. So that's the one area I would say that isn't correct. The rest of the way though, yes, the scale for measuring tornadoes, it measures the damage caused, not necessarily, the wind speed, because National Weather Service sends out people to do surveys post-event. So after a tornado moves through an area, they send these surveyors out to look at the damage. The magnitude of damage is how they rate a tornado. And a tornado is rated on a scale called the Enhanced Fujita scale now. So in recent years, it's been bumped from F0 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to EF. So that's the Enhanced Fujita scale. There is simply just a tweak in the scale of the wind speeds between each one. So it's now considered EF. And Fujita is the name of the scientist who came up with it back in the early 1900s, I think around the 1940s timeline. So the scientists came up with it. We've been using it ever since. EF0 just means that the tornadoes were quick, their wind speeds weren't that high. And then your EF5, of course, is your worst one. That is like the finger of God. That is the monster. That is your 2.5 mile wide tornado spitting winds, over 300 miles per hour. So 88% of the time, on average in the US, tornadoes are going to be your EF0s to EF1s. So that's good news for us. Not every tornado warning that we get means we're going to have a big, giant, destructive tornado. In fact, less than 1% of the time in the US on average do we see those destructive tornadoes, EF4s to EF5s. So that's good news for anyone that's listening, like, oh my God, tornadoes. So yes, that is the scale.
All right, gotcha. So even after a warning has taken place and, the tornado has touched the ground, there's no way for like the lay person, if they're concerned or they need to hide, like just how powerful this thing is actually going to be should it come their way. It's just, it's unfortunately, it's not going to be till like after the fact, God forbid something happens to like, their property or whatever, that they'll say, okay, yeah, that was an F5 that came our way or whatever else. So it's got to be tough.
Yes. Yeah. So, it's strongly recommended that when the sirens go off or you get that tornado warning alert on your phone to just take cover. It's plain and simple.
Gotcha. Yep. All right. Well, so you said that you're based in Texas now. But like, where else has you've been to go and chase storms? I'm assuming you probably must have went back to your home state to do some around there. So, fill us in on some of the places that you went to go chase storms.
Absolutely. So storm chasers also base their activity on their schedules, on, their availability, how much money they have, how much time off work that they can get. So some chasers just go out for the local chase, the one that takes a few hours to get out and get back, and they're home by, nighttime and go to work the next day. Other chasers like Adam and I, we chase what we can, but we also schedule every year what's called a chasecation. And depending on when we schedule it, like if we schedule it for April, May, we're likely going to stay down here in the Southern Plains. But the last 2 years, we've actually scheduled it later in the summer, thus traveling all the way up to North Dakota. So we have been all over the place. We've been to New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, Nebraska. I have not been to Iowa yet. I've come really close to chasing there, but we just kind of make this giant circle and we just take the week off and we go where the storms are at. So I've definitely traveled quite a few states to see tornadoes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So, I didn't realize that. Well, I suppose, yes, tornadoes would be pretty prevalent, just about anywhere, I would suppose. Like even here, I live in North Florida. We actually had a tornado come into right past the airport. Yeah. In Tallahassee.
Yep.
That kind of like shook things up a little bit. And we just had like a crazy torrential downpour outside too. And that was, I certainly wasn't expecting that, living in North Florida. I mean, I figured, hurricanes might come through this area, but tornadoes, but that was interesting to say the least. But now in Texas, where you're at though, like just what is the frequency like for tornadoes within your area? You said you're kind of based in Dallas, just like how frequently do tornadoes form where you're at?
So you can have tornadoes all 12 months of the year. I mentioned my first tornado being in December, a day after Christmas here, in the Metroplex. But our typical season is anywhere from March through May. March, April, May is typically the time of year that we see the most tornadoes. However, we can see a tornado at any point in the year. When the ingredients come together, they come together. It doesn't matter when it is, if it's at night or early in the morning. So we're definitely on alert from about March through May. We have gone on chases as early as January and February. Those are typically, in like states like Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. But here it's typically springtime, though we do have a secondary season in the fall, because what's happening in the spring and fall, the seasons are changing.
Right.
So you get your late cold fronts in the spring or your early cold fronts in the fall. That clash of weather is what contributes, to these severe weather events, among other things. But spring and fall are typically our busy months here.
Gotcha. Wow. Okay. All right. I'm learning some stuff.
Yay! The low-key presentation.
Yeah, slowly but surely. That's a very rewarding thing about me doing this podcast. I just hear all kinds of amazing things and pick up stuff as I go. So it's awesome. All right. So now I want to ask you a little bit about some misadventures and close calls, because, this is a pretty dangerous thing, that you're doing. I mean, but that, of course, that does add to the excitement. But of course, there's risks involved. So, I was hoping, if I may ask you, have you had any close calls, any misadventures? Hopefully, albeit not too potentially catastrophic ones, but I guess what kind of comes to mind?
Well, I've been stuck in the mud myself and with other chasers, and that's not always fun. The one time that Texas Storm Chasers had someone with us, it was a German film crew, all the way from Germany. They had come over to Texas for an entire month to record a segment called Texas Madness. Gee, I wonder why they would ask us, to be a part of it. Yeah, right. Like, so just a quick backstory on this. They had emailed us January of 2018. January 2018, they said, Texas Storm Chasers, we Googled Texas and you came up. We're going to be in Texas the month of June. Can we go storm chasing with you? Well, those of us that live here know that June is not an active month. June is hot as hell. It is blazing. There's nothing going on. So of course I'm like, yeah, sure. Wondering when we can pull out a storm, but lo and behold, they were here for a 2-day stretch and we were actually able to get them on a severe thunderstorm out west of here. So we were actually able to get them in a really cool lightning barrage. And then the one time I've ever been, I haven't been stuck in the mud since, but the one time was with the film crew. And of course they're there to document the entire thing. So luckily for us, it was just a severe thunderstorm. It wasn't a tornado warning, because had it been tornado warned, that could have ended a little differently, being stuck in the mud and waiting for passersby to stop and pull us out. So, if it had to happen, it happened then. And I'm grateful for it. And we've been stuck in the mud with other chasers before. Actually, when tornadoes were ongoing, thankfully they were far away. I do like to share the story of Adam, though. He was in Baldwin, I think it's South Dakota. I get it confused all the time. But he and a bunch of chasers were kind of, not tailgating, what's the word for it? Like a convoy. They were just on their way to a tornado warned storm. Well, of course, back then they're following GPS and looking at the maps, following the roads. Well, this one road ends in a farmer's field, but it looks like on GPS, it looks like it goes straight through. They end up all getting stuck in the field, and their cars started sinking in the field because the field was so wet. Tornadoes actually started dropping down all around them.
Oh,
they
no.
were very, very lucky. I hope I don't ever get in that situation, but and then Chapman, Kansas, May 25th, 2016, we were less than a quarter mile away from this tornado. And, we're on the west side, the tornado's on east of us, and it's moving east, so we can tell it's moving away. But sometimes tornadoes have a mind of their own. And this one actually started to dance back toward us. So we had to shoot south to get out of the way. So, because not only are you worried about the tornado itself, but there's something called a rear flank downdraft or RFD winds that come in and wrap around the tornado, which can be just as dangerous. In fact, Adam's had a back window blown out from that before. So, of course, I'm telling all these stories about him because they're fun to talk about, but lessons learned for me, of course. But so those are probably the couple of instances, where we actually getting stuck in the mud the second time with tornado warned storms. We actually missed a tornado because we were stuck, and we actually had to wait a long time for someone to actually come down the road with an FJ Cruiser and pull us out. So, things happen. Just like everything else in life, you got to just prepare for it and just take it as it comes.
Right. Well, if I win the lottery, I'm going to outfit all your vehicles with winches so that way you can pull yourselves out.
Yes, we totally should do that. We should. I don't know why we haven't yet.
All right. Well, I want to double back to something that you mentioned really quick.
Sure.
You said like this, I can't remember what you called it, like the backlash of the tornado. What would you call that again?
RFD.
RFD. So is this like, when you said that it took out the back window, I'm thinking, is this like an air whip or something like that? I mean, it's just really strong winds that wrap around the tornado itself. Of course, they're not the tornado itself. For lack of better terms, you could refer it to maybe as the outer circulation, whatever. It's close enough to the tornado.
So those high winds, are strong enough to, if it's hailing, it'll drive that hail into your vehicle and bust out windows. And you don't want to get caught up in wind-driven hail. Big hail is enough, but wind-driven, that's talking a different story. That actually happened to us last year. But so yes, it's not only the tornado you have to watch out for. You have to know in relation to the tornado where it's going, what part of the storm you're in, to worry about those other things.
Okay. All right. And also having this film crew come out with you. I mean, obviously there's people out there that are very interested in, events like this. And I would think just in general, just, Mother Nature's power, I guess. I mean, there's probably a better way I could say that though, but I imagine like that has to be quite the appeal for you and your crew is just, I mean, of course, these tornadoes, they're destructive forces. Sometimes a lot of bad things can happen when these things appear. But at the same time, there is just something where, you just can't help but have respect with nature when she decides to drop a few of these, down every now and then. And it's kind of like the same thing when I see, I don't know, like when I see, like, let's say a very powerful apex predator in the wild. It's a powerful cute creature that can mess me up, but it's just, I can't help but have respect for it just because of its power. I mean, would that be accurate? Do you think that's a sentiment that you and your crew feel?
Absolutely. Yes. We never feel 100% in control. We can know as much information as we know about how weather works, how tornadoes work. We can know as much about the area that we're chasing in, but we'll never, ever be 100% prepared. It leads me to bring up, the few storm chasing related deaths we've had in recent years, have been from 3 people who were probably the smartest people in the weather community. They were a research team. They, in all terms, they knew what they were doing, but Mother Nature was one up on them, and all 3 of them passed away. So yeah, you have to have that respect. You have to, or else you can get yourself in big trouble.
Right. Yeah,
yep.
Absolutely. All right. Well, kind of carrying on with our discussion here, you kind of shared us a little bit, some of your misadventures and close calls. Y'all got to avoid the mud. I mean, y'all just gotta
right. Just not. Yeah. Just stop pulling over on the side of the road.
Yeah. It's like if the payment stops, just, turn around or something. And anyway,
yes.
But of course, I'm sure probably looking back on your experiences thus far, there's probably got to be like the one storm that you would probably would top all the other storms that you faced so far. Or as I put in your outline that I sent you, the most radical storm that you've chased. Looking back on your experiences thus far, what do you think that would be? Can you tell us that story?
Right offhand, that would have to be Chapman, Kansas, May 25th, 2016. That tornado was my first big daytime tornado, because my first tornado was at the end of 2015. So now we're in early 2016 chasing, and I just saw my first daytime big tornado. This was an EF4 that was on the ground for 90 minutes. We watched this thing from birth until end. We followed the wall cloud. We followed the storm. We slowly trekked behind it and watched it. And just to watch that whole process was just mind-blowing to me. And that is the only storm I got to do that with out of the 27 tornadoes that I've seen so far. So to be able to be there for the beginning and to track that thing all the way through and right until it died, it was the most magical 90 minutes of my life. Wow. At that point, to witness the different stages. A tornado isn't the same shape the entire time. It cycles, it evolves, it does all these things, and to witness that and to not know what was coming next, like you said, mad respect. Absolutely. So yes, that would be the best storm I've ever been on, just because of the things I got to witness and feel and document. I need another one of those. I have not had another one of those storms since. So it's time. It's due. Come on, 2021.
Okay. Yes. So an EF4 for 90 whole minutes. Oh, wow. Yep. Now 90 minutes, is that typically longer than what Morse tornadoes would be? Is it the higher the number classification goes, the longer it'll be on the ground for? How does that work?
You're exactly right. You nailed it. That tornado falls in that 1%. So, which probably explains why I haven't seen one since then. But I mean, there have been some since, I just wasn't there to see it. So yes, EF0, quick, 30-second, hurricane force, maybe up to 110 miles per hour, I believe is the scale. And then your EF1s on the ground for a little bit longer. EF2s, maybe 20 minutes, EF3s, 4s, 5s, yes, they're typically on the ground for longer. They're packing thus higher wind speeds, thus causing more damage.
Gotcha. So if we have an EF5 show up down the line, what are we expecting? Like a 2-hour runtime for that thing?
Yeah. It can be that way. So buckle up and make sure you have underground shelter. That is something you do not want to be above ground for. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's funny how you mentioned that this occurred in Kansas. And what year was this again? That
2016.
2016. Okay. I went through Kansas for the first time it was like late 2017. And I'm heading out to out west to start my first archaeology job in New Mexico. And so I'm cutting through Kansas to get there. And I remember I was driving southbound down this road. To the east of me was just clear, beautiful blue skies. And to the right of me, it was just total darkness, crazy cloud cover. And here I am going south, and then sudden, the road, it just curves just straight right, and I'm heading straight into the storm. And then I turned on the radio. I'm trying to see if I can pick up any local chatter, and turns out there was a couple of tornado warnings in the area, and I was just starting to drive through it. And I did the only logical thing I could think of to do at the time is I put on that song, Long Way Down by Goo Goo Dolls from the Twister soundtrack and just started going in there and keeping my eyes peeled, which I didn't see any tornadoes, thank goodness. But actually, I don't know, I say thank goodness, but at the same time, I kind of wanted to.
You were there. You were so close.
I was so close. But it turned out I was just kind of in an area where just some pretty radical thunder and lightning was taking place. But I remember that was an interesting situation. I probably should have expected something like that to happen if I'm going through Kansas. Yeah. And lo and behold, I guess that's common. It's just radical thunderstorms and tornadoes are just commonplace, I guess.
Here's a question for you. What would you have done if you saw a tornado? What is your first instinct thought to do? Spit it out.
Take a picture.
There you go. Okay, that's document. Okay, that's good. Would you have stopped under an overpass?
I don't know if I would have stopped at all. I probably would have just tried to outrun the thing. I see the whole, some vehicles in movies or shows, getting under an overpass and then just trying to tuck themselves up in the side. But I don't know, you're still pretty exposed right there. So I'm not sure.
Spot on. I just wanted to take this as a good learning opportunity for those that might be listening. It used to be thought that overpasses were safe. This came about in the 90s when an Oklahoma family and a news crew took shelter under one and survived. So then it all became overpasses, if you're driving, are perfectly safe. No, for reasons you just named, you're still exposed. Plus you're going to back up traffic, keep others behind you from actually getting to a safer spot. You actually just want to find a ditch. If you're nowhere near civilization, you just want to find a ditch, get out your car and lay as flat as possible. So that's one thing you want to do. Another thing is if you had seen a tornado, the best thing for someone to do is just to watch it for a few seconds. If it's still right here and it's doing this, they gotta go, But if the tornado is, with each passing second moving slowly right or left, they're likely okay. It's that whole it starts here and it gets bigger and bigger in our view. That's when you gotta go. So just a little tidbit there.
All right. Gotcha.
There we go.
Okay. Yeah. Because I had figured that an overpass like that would almost just be like a giant wind tunnel at that point, when the tornado comes through. So because it's you're channeling all that air and pressure just right through that narrow, seemingly narrow spot, and probably in comparison to the tornado. So yeah,
you are very smart for thinking that. I just want to say that right now. You're the first person who's actually just been oh no, that's it's not a logical thing to do. So kudos.
Okay. All right. Well, I do got some science experience, so I guess I don't know, just put it two and two together. But I'm glad I'm on the right right track, though.
You are.
And it sounds like if I had seen a tornado when I was driving through Kansas, I would have done the right thing.
You would have had an epic spot to see one.
Made it through. So,
yes.
Okay. All righty. Well, kind of shifting gears a little bit, you've kind of mentioned that sort of at the start of, your journey as a storm chaser, you had a lot going on. You were going to school, you had your job. And of course, you became a mother, and then, you got married and everything. So with just kind of all of those roles and responsibilities that you have in your life, how do you kind of sort of strike a balance with doing it all? Because it's a lot of work to show up effectively in all those areas. So how do you kind of do it yourself?
You're absolutely right. Before having a child, it was just easy to tell the ex-husband, "Hey, I'm headed out for a storm chase with a few friends. I'll see you tonight or late, early in the morning, what have you." But now, his dad and I have custody where we do 1 week on, 1 week off. We just split it right down the middle. He's actually with his dad this week, which is why I picked this time. But when I'm mom mode, since I only do that 2 weeks out of the month, I'm strictly mom. Unless like my first tornado, I had him that weekend. I drove into town. I dropped him off at his grandparents. They were more than willing to see him for a few hours to let me go storm chase. So, my ability is restricted, but the support I have now is unmatched. My family's very supportive of what I do. Are they as eager as I am? No. I have it on my phone where my dad and my stepmom can track me. If I'm out chasing and I'm not responding to texts and calls, they can at least see where I'm at, so they have peace of mind. But when it comes to balancing, I have a full-time job. I work in the insurance industry, which is very ironic for what I do, but
just a little bit.
A little bit. So I do have a full-time job from home. It was before COVID, so that was nice. But I do that during the day. When we go on our chasecations, most storms aren't happening till the afternoon and evening. So I'm able to just plow through my work throughout the day in the hotel of wherever we're staying to catch storms later that day. I'm doing my work during the day, and I shut it down about 4 or 5 o'clock just in time for storms to be initiating and get out there for the night. So every person's different. There are people out there who chase everything because they're single and they're not tied down by anything. So every storm chaser has their own story. Mine is just simply just fitting in the puzzle pieces where they fit. I've totally given up on the idea that I'll ever be able to chase anything and everything that happens, especially here in North Texas, and that's okay. So it's just, I just chase when I can, and I just have the best support system.
Right. Well, you make an interesting point when you talk about how, you go into these certain modes depending on either, like you said, the time of day or the situation that in is, when you have, your son, okay, it's mom mode. I'm going to be present as a mom. And then, here comes the storms, and, work for the insurance job is done for the day, full chaser mode. And, you just kind of go back and forth pretty much.
Yes, it's a little crazy, but, I've had extremely supportive people behind me, who are just like, "Hey, we're here to help whenever we can." So it's just having that support system is probably the biggest reason why I'm able to do what I do. So.
Right. Which sometimes can be hard to come by, considering the nature, pun intended, of what it is you're trying to do. Because I remember like some of the more risky pursuits that I've had in my life. Like I joined the military, like right out of high school. And, had I not had the support from my parents to go do that, that probably would have been a harder thing for me to actually leave and go do. And same thing when I lived abroad a couple of times to pursue other, things in my life, getting the support from family and loved ones was very helpful in that moment. So, so props to, the family for helping you out on that one.
Yes,
So.
Absolutely. And it reminded me of a podcast I saw you had in the last year or so. It was about how you start your morning. That resonated with me so much because, if I get up early and I attack everything I need to do, that leaves my day a little bit more wide open to be able to handle those last minute changes or what have you. So I'm a big believer in setting that foundation early every day in the morning, yes, that was awesome. So
Right.
That helps on a daily, you know.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Mornings are a critical time for the day to set things up for sure. So right on. All right. So, and kind of sort of piggybacking off of this, another thing I like to ask my guests is just some of the takeaways and life lessons that we learn from our adventures and our travels, you know, because I just feel like, you know, there's this quote where that those that go out on an adventure come back differently than they were, or they're different before they left. Or I totally butchered that saying, but
I felt it though. I felt
you
it.
get what I mean.
All that matters. Yes.
So, okay. So turning that actually to the form into question for you, what are some of your big takeaways and life lessons from your adventures with storm chasing, for getting to see different places around the country? What kind of comes to mind?
Well, the journey to get here, you know, after that complete fallout of not being able to complete my degree in meteorology was a huge hit on me mentally and emotionally. I didn't have a plan B. So I just fell into the ways of the world. I fell into, well, I'm in my early 20s. I shouldn't still be in college. I need to hurry up and finish. I need to get that amazing salary corporate job. I need to get married. I need to start settling down because that period of my life is over. It is absolutely not over. And my biggest takeaway was it took a life-altering change, not initiated by me, but to this day, I'm grateful it happened, is when my son's dad and I divorced. I didn't see it coming. It happened. I felt like that hit the reset button. It really woke me up. And I'm like, well, heck, if this is changing, why shouldn't everything else in my life? Because this is a big enough, like, whoa. So I took a real hard look. I'm like, I'm hardly home for my son. You know, I'm driving 2 hours a day to this job that I hate. You know, I wasn't fulfilled, you know, in that. So I took that life-altering time and really just hit it hard. Like, well, if that's changing, then everything else should. So I dove into a commission-only job afterwards. I do not recommend that, but it gave me skills that I do know now. So I met a lot of great people. It taught me how to network and reach out and talk to people. But basically, it's not over. It's not too late. I never imagined that I would be in this spot with you today, talking about storm chasing, talking about the adventures I've had for the last 6, 7, 8 years. 10 years. Hello. We're in 2021 now. Wow. It's, you know, I still
time flies, right?
1990 was 10 years ago. I'm that person. So, it's very long-winded what I'm trying to say, but that moment in time hasn't passed you by. It is never too late to go after what you were born and intended to do. I also had a speech impediment that held me back for a lot of my life. I had a really bad stutter. And
I never would have guessed. Thank
you. I work really hard to make sure that doesn't happen. But I grew up with a stutter. My dad does it. My grandpa does it. It was just something I thought I was going to live with forever. And it took that divorce happening to push me into a new career, that pushed me out in front of people to finally grow in that realm. And here I am public speaking, like, holy crap. So never give up. It is not too late. And when those life-altering times happen in your life that you didn't plan on, take it and just hold it in the air and say, I can do one better. And, you know, take that as a time to reflect and go ahead and just make those changes. So,
right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of like to look at it like, you know, your life is one big story, and stories consist of various chapters. And you want to start off each chapter, you know, with something gripping, because, you know, it's just, you know, to keep your story exciting, and, you know, in this analogy, keep the readers engaged, so to speak. We're putting a lot of analogies out there today.
Yeah, we are.
Messing about. But it's just like, yeah, you want to make your chapters compelling, you know, right from the start, and carrying them on as you go forward too. And like you've mentioned, you know, some of those chapters, you know, they may not be entirely in your control. You know, things happen that totally shift things and push you into a new chapter, or sometimes those new chapters might be deliberate, or you see a change in yourself and you want to start a new chapter. But it's it's just you got to keep making those chapters fun and exciting, and you know, sounds like you're doing that very much right now as you continue on with the storm chasing. So
100%.
Okay, right on. All right. Well, we are kind of starting to bump up against time, but before we get to the wrap up, I want to give you a couple of moments here to tell us, a little bit more about Texas Storm Chasers. We hinted at it, right from the get-go in this episode, but, fill us in a little bit more about the organization. And I know you're out there doing speaking engagements and things like that. So just, kind of fill us in on some of the intel there.
Sure. Texas Storm Chasers, as we know it now, is a 11-year group in the making. It started out with 2 high school guys in 2009 who recorded wildfires that happened here locally, and their stuff went viral on social media. Oh, wow. So they took that and said, wow, there's a need for this kind of content. So they grew it into what it is now, providing statewide, weather coverage, weather content, and then, the speaking engagements. There's 3 guys and 3 gals. I'm the most talkative one, obviously, out in front of people. People think of scientists and weather people as just big nerds. We are. I just happen to be the more social nerd of everybody. So when we're not storm chasing, I wanted a way to continue, being a part of Texas Storm Chasers. And that's where I came up with giving severe weather talks. Namely because North Texas is fast becoming that area where people are moving in droves from all over the United States, and they have no clue how our weather is. So I'm currently giving speaking presentations to area schools. PTA program chairs are who I work with right now to bring this content to their student bodies. And of course, these days it's virtual. So, our group, where we have big goals for 2021 and beyond, we just got on TikTok. Woo! We're on there now. So putting weather content out there, but we're just a group of 6 people who have a passion for weather, who happen to have strengths in certain areas that we operate on. And mine is just being able to be a part of podcasts like this with you, and to be out in front of our community, giving severe weather preparedness talks and such. So.
Right on. I'm trying to picture what storm chasing TikToks will look like. Like sync up like tornadoes with music and stuff. And
we're touching and going and seeing how different things work. Yeah.
See what features and everything will align with what you're doing. So
exactly.
Just have fun with it, right?
Yes, you're absolutely right.
All right. Awesome. All right. So getting into the wrap up, one thing I also like to ask my guests to do is to issue a challenge to our listeners. We've been hearing some amazing stories from you, hearing about some of your adventures, and, a lot of your adventures have been very exciting and fulfilling. And so I kind of want to sort of encourage our listeners to kind of do the same, to get out there and find adventures for themselves. So with that, what challenge would you issue to our listeners today for them to go out there and start living a more adventurous life?
Oh, that 1 or 2 or 3 things in the back of your mind that always tend to tickle the back of your thoughts from time to time, that you quickly push away and say, oh, I don't have time to do that. Oh, I don't have the resources. Act on it. What are you lacking? Get out there, start talking to people in the area of interest, and just strike up a conversation. You never know who in your friends, on social media, might be interested in what you want to do. So it's I dare someone to just take the time in 2021 to take those back thoughts that you tend to push back into your head because of whatever reasons, and just say, why not? You came up with the reasons of why you can't do it, but come up with things, that you can. I'm trailing off here. I had so much going in my head trying to get it out. Part of the stuttering there. Rewind, basically, to take what's been holding you back, push that aside, and just see what happens. Go for it. Just initiate that conversation. Do some research. Take an hour out of your day once a week to just plug in 100% into what you're passionate about. And you never know where that will take you.
Because that those feelings and those ambitions, I guess we can also call them, those aren't going to go away. I mean, it's just... And I would hate for anyone to just be at the end of their life and still have those ambitions, but they never capitalized on them. It's just, there's this quote that I've heard, and I'm not sure who I've heard this from. I don't know where I get half my quotes, to be honest, but it says, hell is meeting the person that you could, at the end of your life, that you could have been while you were alive, or something. And I'm like, wow, yeah, that actually struck me, because
I got goosebumps as you said that. Oh my gosh. Yes. And another quote I would add on to that, I heard, I want to say it was Les Brown or Eric Thomas. I listen to a lot of motivation stuff, but the richest people in the world are the ones that are 6 feet under because they died with ideas and ambitions that they never realized.
Wow.
So yeah,
that's
just
a big
to
one
tie
too.
that up. Yeah. Blow some minds out there.
Yeah. All right. So get out there and act, everyone. Just get out there and act. So
get out there and do it.
All right. Awesome. All right. What I have for you next is my final 3. These are 3. I like to think that they're fun questions that could be subjective, but all my guests get asked these questions. So you're going to get asked these as well. And the first of these 3 questions is, what is your favorite place that you've been to so far?
South Dakota, Black Hills. Oh, yes.
I like that area.
Yeah.
That's a really nice area. I'm more, in tune with the Badlands myself, but the Black Hills are very nice. So yeah, I remembered I had a couple of close encounters with some buffalo there. I wasn't trying to get close to them. I just, wasn't paying attention, and I stumbled in their path and kind of had to retreat a little bit. Whoops. It all turned out okay, but that was on me for not paying attention and keeping my wits about me. But yeah, but that's a first too. I don't think anyone's even mentioned South Dakota in general, let alone the Black Hills. So there we go. A lot of firsts for this episode, Chelsea. So I'm digging this.
Yes.
All right. And the next question, what is one thing on your bucket list that you have yet to do?
Northern Lights.
In Iceland.
I want, Iceland, Alaska, wherever. Adam has seen them, in Chicago where he's from. But I've never seen them in person. And that's always been a bucket list item of mine, is to get to one of those countries, Canada, or go up to Alaska or Iceland, somewhere to witness those.
Okay, right on. And the last question, and this is a 2-parter. What is your favorite animal, and have you seen this animal in the wild?
Oh, it used to be panda bears. And I guess I would still say it's panda bears. And no, I haven't. I did read that one book and watch that one movie about the little boy whose dad worked in China with the pandas, and he flew over there to see his dad. And The Amazing Panda Adventure, I think, is the book in the movie.
I feel like this is a fictional film, right? Not like a documentary or anything.
Correct.
Like, okay,
right.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. It was probably an early 90s film, I'm sure.
It was. Yep.
Okay. Yep. I think we're gonna have to take to Google when we're done with the call, because
Amazing Panda Adventure. I'm willing to bet lunch on that. Yeah.
Amazing Panda Adventures.
Yes.
So.
Almost positive that's what it was. But I read that book. I watched that movie. Pandas are still my favorite, and I have not. So that should be a bucket list too.
Yeah. So far, I've only seen them in zoos, but to see them out in the wild would
in
be
the wild, no.
Amazing. Yeah. So, all right. Okay. Well, Chelsea, that's it. That's all the questions that I have for you today. But before we close out here, where can our listeners go to connect with you? I know you, as well as Texas Storm Chasers, the organization, is out there, in the internet space and on social media. So where can we find y'all?
We sure are. To keep it simple, TexasStormChasers.com. There are 2 S's in there. So you have Texas and then the leading S for storm. So a lot of people try to do the one, but TexasStormChasers.com. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. And now TikTok. So if you just go to those platforms and just search Texas Storm Chasers, we should just pop right up at the top. So yep.
All right. And I'll get all those linked up in the show notes for this episode too, so listeners can find them there as well. All right. Well, Chelsea, I want to thank you very much for taking the time for joining me today. I had a lot of fun with this conversation because, again, anything nature related, especially something as powerful as storms, is something that I'm definitely going to take interest in. So I really appreciate you being here and just sharing some of your insights and stories with myself and the listeners. This has been awesome.
Thank you, Josh. I really appreciate that. It's been fun. I can't believe it's over already. Prepped all week for this, and whoop, there it goes. It's gone. It's fun. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, right on.